everyone with zero experience required. Today we're making a marble run out of some oak. And hopefully it'll look like this. This was a bit of a challenge because it dealt with angles other than 45 and 90, which are the only stops I've ever really used on my miter saw. So this was interesting.
Let's start off with cutting off the box that will catch on the marbles on the bottom.
When you have a caliper to set a pretty horrible table saw, you can get some pretty darn amazing results.
This was a pretty simple box. All I did was just cut the sides to equal length as well as the front and the back, and then I just glued it up. Real simple. Next, we'll cut the vertical risers.
With the help of Google SketchUp, I have calculated where I need to put marks and where I need to remove just a little bit to have a notch for the cross beams to sit in well.
To cut the slots, I make this piece to prevent me from going too deep when cutting them, but this would have been better done with a dado blade and probably a table sled, which I have neither. So I just took the long route of doing this with a bandsaw, which is definitely not the best way to do this.
Got the router set up so we can do a little nice round nose on this oak. It's not centered, so we're going to run it through, reverse it, then run it through again.
So I carved out the groove with one go, but it would have been better to do multiple passes while raising the router bit. The results I got were passable. Would have been better to do it the other way. To make it so the runners glue to the risers, we need a 5-degree angle on this cut. And we need to make it so they are perfectly lined up. So that's what I do here. Then I drill the hole for the marble to fall through with a piece underneath to prevent any kind of tear out by the bit.
So tested it out and had an issue where the marbles were hitting the edge of the hole that I drilled and bouncing out. Tested and put some blocks here, which seemed to solve that problem. Unfortunately, my wife did not like that solution, so I'm going to have to come up with something that actually sits inside that cavity. Here's what it looks like assembled. Unfortunately, I messed up in my calculations. I'm going to have to add 1/4 of an inch to the bottom over here. Not a huge deal, it's just really annoying. So, check your calculations 3 times, your measurements twice, and cut once.
I shaped the pieces of wood to fill in the gaps on the belt sander in order to make it so the marbles bounce correctly. And this is me testing it out, and they seem to work. I accidentally made the box not square, so I'm using the belt sander to cover up those mistakes. And then I use a sander to just smooth everything out and try to put a nice edge over it. But I wish I had used a router to make a nice kind of consistent curve on all the pieces, because I later on actually end up sanding it again while it's assembled to get a much smoother finish. And then I glue this. It actually was not that hard to glue. The one mistake I make is making sure that the risers are actually centered on all the slots. Otherwise, you'll end up with like 1/16 of an inch gaps like I did.
So first stage of clamping, I've got all the runners on to the risers. And then I've also glued on what I'm calling the bumpers, which are needed to make it so the balls actually go through correctly.
Gluing this up showed true that the saying that you can never have enough clamps. Honestly, if you have a woodworker in your life, you can always buy them clamps and they'll always be grateful. Unless they're snobs. Then don't buy them anything. You can actually see on the near bottom riser the chatter caused by the router bit just being too aggressively done. It's not too bad to the hand, but it just, here it's quite apparent. For finishing, I was originally planning to go with mineral oil and beeswax just because of the kid nature of this. But it was pointed out that, a marble track's going to be for 3 up. And by that age, they should stop biting toys in all reality. Also, polyurethane tends to last longer and doesn't need to be retouched. The only problem with polyurethane is it drips, and if you don't catch it, it kind of turns out kind of nasty. And there's a few drips here I missed, as well as some things I messed up when I tried to make sure to prevent drips. I thought my rubber gloves were safe to grab it and move it when it was stained, but it wasn't. It ruined the finish in some spots, which I'll have to deal with. But other than that, it turned out really well. This is that polyurethane and stain in one by Minwax, and it worked well. I had a few drips, but honestly, kids are not going to care.
Ready for it to go down?
Yeah.
Ready, set, go!
Ooh, that was pretty fun.
That's fun. Thank you for watching Zero Experience Required making this marble track. Hopefully you learned something, because I sure did. This was a bigger challenge than I expected, and I definitely learned quite a bit. Also, please subscribe. I need 1,000 subscribers to get any kind of monetization on this channel, and I'm currently around 600. So if you could just hit that subscribe button, that would be great. Also, comment some ideas for what kind of videos you'd like to see. I'm able to do woodworking of a limited scope, and I'm also able to work on certain cars. So, let me know. Thank you. Bye.